Hello everyone, welcome to episode 13 of the Green Effect podcast. Let me explain how we went from episode 6 to episode 13. I found that we had a low number of episodes and it didn't look like we were doing a lot of work. So every part 1, part 2, etc. is going to get its own episode number. So lucky number episode 13 is coming at you right now. We've got the amazing George Dube and Peter Cuttini, who are partners at BDO in Kitchener. They are the wonder accountants who specialize in real estate investing, and I deal with them quite a bit. They've become very good friends of mine, and they're going to give out some great advice. So in episode 13, which is part 1 of 2 for their visit with me, we're going to talk about how they started their business. So they started in a house next to a Thai food place. How do they approach business? How have they seen business change over time? And then we're going to start to get into more of why we're having them on the shows around planning, and then doing some more planning around how you build your real estate investment empire. We're going to talk about CRA changes. What are they seeing from CRA, Canada Revenue Agency? What about CRA audits? Apparently, I didn't know this until we had them on the show, CRA audits are not a bad thing sometimes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to get into talking about the structure of corporations, what they're seeing, and just overall how they advise some of their clients. So we've got some really great information coming at you. And without further delay, here we go with George and Peter.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Welcome everybody to the Green Effect Podcast. Today we've got 2 special guests. We've got George Dube and Peter Cuttini. They are partners at BDO here in Kitchener, Ontario, and they are accountants who specialize in real estate accounting in particular. Hello, Peter and George.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello.
So thanks for coming on. You two are, as far as I know and as far as I've heard, the experts in real estate accounting. So because I do these little mortgage things that I do, I thought, good thing to have you guys on, and especially with me doing so much investor stuff, I think it'd be great to have you on and tell us all the secrets that you know. So how we start all of our shows, and this one, I don't know how long this is going to take because I know there's a bit of a string, but how did we meet? We're going back years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And former careers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it was BMO when I was at Bank of Montreal.
With one of your colleagues that I knew introduced us.
Through commercial, I think.
Stephen Adair.
Yeah, or there was an area manager or something like that. But it was through BMO.
Yeah.
We went to lunch.
Yeah,
I remember
yes.
that. And at that time, you guys had your own firm.
Correct.
So you had Dube and Cuttini.
Correct.
That's right.
And you were down on that. It's now what, a Thai food place in Kitchener?
We're right next
Beside
to
it.
Right next to it. Oh, that's
Yep.
right. Yeah. The orange and red building or
Yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah, that was a nice building too.
It was.
So there was the BMO, and then after that, I know I had left BMO, moved over to RBC, and I remember I got a call from you, and you were asking about financing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we were having troubles with clients trying to obtain financing with corporations, and we wanted to get the latest and greatest information, and so reached out, and the next thing you know, I'm blessed with a variety of information and trying to help clients just try and get that financing into place. It was, not that it's not today, but I mean, certainly at that time we were having hiccups, and anyway, we re-engaged.
Yep. And then I know then RAIN came into the picture, so Real Estate Investment Network.
Yep.
I mean, actually, I remember that first phone call because I was new to RBC. And you're asking me things that I'm like, I think we do that. Sounds like, I remember it was like, well, I'll take that away and check, and I'll take that away and check, and I'll take it away and check. And sure enough, it was a really good match. So then off to RAIN, right? So then I joined RAIN, Real Estate Investment Network, attended some meetings, met some great people. And I know you guys had some clients that I worked with to try to help them through this stuff. And then I think then you guys got introduced to Rockstar, and then I got introduced to Rockstar, and just it's crazy how the little maze
It's a
goes.
very small community.
Yeah. Yeah. And now here we are in a podcast.
Yeah.
Funny how it all goes. So, okay. So, talk to me a little bit about your path with your business. So obviously you had your own firm. How was it owning your own business in a we'll call it a smaller town, but how was all that?
I loved it, to be
Sure.
honest
So,
with you.
yeah, absolutely. I think owning your own business gives you an appreciation for being an entrepreneur, being responsible for the day-to-day well-being of your employees, making sure all the bills are paid. You know, there's something to be said about that. You're the owner. You know, it's on you.
All of it is on you.
All of it is on you.
It's easy to figure out whose fault it is.
Yep.
It's very, very fast process to identify. But I mean, there was a lot of great things about it. There's awesome things about being part of a larger firm. But yes, most definitely, I do think back nostalgically, perhaps at times, with the firm that Peter and I had, and prior to that. But it's not like it was all rainbows and lollipops. There were also issues for sure.
Yeah, and it's got to be a big change going from your own shop to now you've got multiple people in a big shop, and you know having to lots of answers and questions you got to give and stuff like that.
And the way we want to do things doesn't necessarily always get implemented.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's like when you change companies in general too, right? It's like you go from one to another. Okay, you can't do that here, and you know you hear people say, "Well, when I was here, I could do this." Well, you're not there anymore, right? So, how was it having? And I mean, obviously, the show is going out to everybody, but how is it having a business in Kitchener? Like, is the downtown when you guys were there? And I mean, you're still kind of you're up in Uptown Waterloo.
Uptown
now,
Waterloo,
but
yep.
when it was in Kitchener, how is it owning a business in Kitchener and maybe even now in Waterloo as business owners?
I don't actually focus so much on the geography aspect, and I think that's partly the nature of our clients for the past 20, 25 years. And again, it goes back a number of years, but I had a small office in Stratford, and even today, I mean, I'll spend time in our Stratford office, Brantford, Cambridge, Peter a little bit more, I think, in the Guelph occasionally, Mississauga office, etc. So the geography, one, because of our clients and the people that we work with, I don't myself really associate the business with Kitchener or Waterloo.
We weren't a local practice.
Right.
We were a practice that was located in Kitchener, but not a Kitchener practice per se.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and that's not a knock with Kitchener or Waterloo.
It's just the way our practice grew.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Very happy to be part of the community and own real estate and what have you. But yeah, from the business perspective, I don't associate it as a Kitchener Waterloo practice.
Yeah, I only asked that because I was obviously I was the manager at the downtown BMO there for a bit, and you know there's so many different kind of issues that run into that local market, and you know everything from having all the social programs there to new condos going up, right? So I was curious as to kind of what a local business owner at that time would have kind of gone through, because it's a very different market now to then, and then even to Uptown Waterloo. It's
I
just
think some of the biggest challenges we had is just them repairing Queen Street.
It was always
twice.
construction.
And I think it might still be going on,
Yeah.
or it needs to go on again.
Yep.
So, and of course, George, you've written some books.
Yes.
Yeah. So shameless plugs are totally okay here.
That's right. I mean, the books that we've done have been obviously real estate focused, but now they're dated actually, and they need updates with respect to from the tax perspective in particular. One of the books was combination of legal and tax accounting matters, but now we're trying to more so put a variety of articles together online as compared to specifically this large business card in many ways with the book, and not that it was a absolute fabulous experience writing the book, editing it. I wouldn't give that up for almost anything, but now having done that, I do like the idea of doing smaller things online, getting information out to people, and not having the, I'll call it responsibility of, or requirement of allocating so much time to kind of an all or nothing program. So it's nice having those shorter, articles and having the ability to, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to write the whole thing. Different colleagues can be participating in parts of that and providing their specific areas of expertise. It's not on my shoulders type of thing, which was also a neat part of the process, but glad I did it once. I'm glad it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I think that's where most are headed now. Is not so much the book; it's the online, it's the quick tweets or the just our blog.
Yeah.
Literally, I think that's where we spend most of our content now. It's more timely. It gets it out there faster. You can pull stuff that's dated. When it's in hard copy, it's hard to pull that back or update.
Yeah, I think that's where everything is going now. Like I look at not only the RBC side of things that I work on, but also through competitive volleyball with, like, for example, my new club I just started. And, you know, it's everything is Instagram, Twitter, blogs, websites. Listen, when I send out questions to clients to close a deal, I send out a YouTube video about the collateral charge process, and they watch me on screen. So it's gone from, you know, books and encyclopedias to YouTube and blogs and stuff. So yeah, the business is definitely, well, not the business in general has changed that way. Right now, you're known for your great blog or your great YouTube channel or your great podcast or whatever the case
That's
may
right.
be.
You almost have to have it now.
Yeah.
And even Peter and I, we relatively recently just got into more of the video presentations, webinars we've been doing for a long while, but just trying to build up a library of some of those common topics that we get from the real estate perspective, business perspective, and I think that's, again, just where things are heading, and it's certainly much easier to update. And it's fun to do, quite frankly.
It's quicker.
It is yes.
quicker.
It is
yeah.
quicker.
And you can go back and edit.
Yeah.
Right. You put something in a book, it's there
It's live.
forever, and you can't question. Oh, I didn't say that. You can go back. You can edit a Facebook page though.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's the business has definitely changed that way, and even like with it almost adds it adds respect to you, right? I've got people that say, "Oh, I heard your podcast." Oh, you know, which one did you hear?
Sure.
Right. But now all of a sudden I've got some respect going because, you know, I've got a podcast. I could be talking about nothing on there, but I have a podcast.
It also adds time, though, unfortunately, because you have to stay current. Yeah. You have to continuously put stuff out there, and if you're not, you're dated pretty quick. Yeah. It's like Apple. I mean, Apple gets punished if they haven't come out with a new product in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, the stock just gets punished, and I'm like, 6 months?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole other topic too, where, you know, everyone's already got the most coolest phone, and you don't really need to go any cooler, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other topic. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So, okay, so let's get into one of the main reasons why I want to have you on here. So very specific to real estate investors. And sorry, let me back up a second. So within your roles, in particular, I know you focus on real estate investors. Tell me more about your focus there, how you help people with this, what other kind of specialties you guys get into, stuff like that.
Sure, I'll start that, I guess, then. In terms of working with our clients on the real estate side of things, we will, usually speaking, get started in the sense of, okay, how are you organized? What are your objectives? What are you trying to do short-term, medium, long-term? And put together recommendations with respect to how we think they should be organized, and try and create a structure where it'll be very, very simple at the beginning, but not too simple in certain cases. Too simple can be very expensive. But be able to set that structure up such that our clients can be able to grow into something further, or alternatively, perhaps they're not looking to grow. They're happy where they're at. They're a little bit more established, or are not looking to become real estate tycoons, for example. And a number of our clients are going to be the doctors, the engineers, the other accountants, business owners, consultants, etc. And they're trying to tie in their day-to-day job, if you will, with real estate investing. And so then we'll provide assistance with integrating those, showing them how they can, in many cases, just making some tweaks, do things much more efficiently from a tax and accounting perspective, and start to hit goals and objectives, whether, again, those are shorter, medium, or long term. Peter?
Yeah, I would say ultimately, what we like from clients is tell us where you're going. Tell us where you want to be. Don't tell you where you are today. Where are you going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now? Let's plan around where you want to go. I think that's always what I tell clients. It's not so much today, it's where do you want to be? Let's get you there.
And I think with real estate investing, I think that's really important. And I think we've had these conversations where, maybe I have a client, they're not yours, but we have a client that clearly has not planned properly. They're going to be a tax disaster, not because they didn't know what they were doing, but they didn't have the plan, the guidance, and we talk about that a lot, giving the advice. Like, here's the advice, this is what you need to do. Yeah, you may have some upfront costs now, but you're going to save some money later, right? So I think that's really key when we're talking about real estate investing. Plan 5-10 years, right? Especially if you're self-employed. Good God, right? There's so many things there. So
yeah, you can't measure the overall real estate deal in 6 months or a year. This isn't your stock, it's gone up 10% or whatever that. You got to look at the entire length of the deal, because some of these you're going to hold for 20, 30 years, if not longer. It might be a multi-generational asset.
Yeah, I think a key thing too that we see is it's not just that setup, but now an ongoing relationship where we are helping monitor, we are adjusting the plans with respect to as their business and investment choices change or events happen, if you will, life circumstances happen. And so you get into that monitoring, getting to know the clients a little bit more, where you can, to the degree possible, get inside of their heads to see what's important to them. Okay, based on that and our knowledge then of changing rules from a particularly a tax perspective, okay, here's what we should be doing, here's how we're going to tweak what we've got going on to be able to accommodate those changes that are, in many cases, some cases predictable. In other words, young mother and father has some young kids. Well, the kids aren't going to be very involved in the business for a little bit of time, but at some point, one or more of them may be. And there's different planning opportunities. There's going to be a point mom and dad want to retire. There's going to be a point there's a semi-retirement or changing from a job or a business into more real estate. And different people will do things in different ways, but I don't like seeing the concept that here's the plan and now we can kind of do a very, very nice mural of it, put it on the wall, and it's good for 30 years. That might only be good for a couple of years. It may be good for 6 months. But not that we want wholesale changes all the time, of course, but it has got to be a living document where we're going to be able to edit as time progresses.
I heard Lou Lamoriello one time, so former GM of the Leafs, when he first came on board, he said, yeah, we have a 5-year plan and we change it every day, because to your point, it's things change, right? And you got to constantly be communicating and giving the new advice and stuff like that, right? And then with these real estate investors, I'd like to see them grow. And I joke with them, I say, you guys are growing up, right? So I have one right now, for example. I have a few like this. They got into it, right? They bought a few properties, maybe some single family homes. Not great cash flow, but there's some cash flow there. Well, now they start to get the itch for duplex, triplex. Oh, we can make some money, and we got some equity over here, right? So now they're graduating, right? And that's when now this planning and the advice, well, now maybe we're changing. Now we may have to look at a corp, or how are you going to deal with cap gains, or whatever the case may be, right? So it's nice when you kind of see the evolution, but then to your point, you got to update. And
you have to see all sides. Like, it can't just be a tax focus or a financing focus, because we've told clients you may have to pay a little bit more tax to get mortgage. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that. They got to show income.
Self-employed.
Yeah.
You can't be tax savvy and get a mortgage sometimes.
Yep.
You can't have it both ways, right?
Pick and choose.
Yeah, exactly. And it, I think people sometimes don't get that. And I think that's where taking the time and then them realizing, that, okay, crap, we better pay this or do this or whatever to really realize our dreams.
I remember speaking to a gentleman at a trade show, and he was upset that he couldn't get mortgages for his properties. And he's like, I make a couple $100,000 a year. I'm like, okay, well, why? They say I don't report enough. Oh, so you've gone into your bank. You told them your tax return is 30 or 40 grand net, but you've got a bunch of cash sales. Yeah. So you basically told them you're committing fraud.
That's odd. There was no mortgage coming forth.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. He didn't like that answer, but
No. And you both probably see this. As you do this longer, it becomes more of an advice-based business. So I'll give an example. Client calls me, and maybe I've done a mortgage or two for them, and now they want to go joint with somebody else, right? And listen, realtors are out there to sell real estate, so it's our job to kind of direct them where they need to. So maybe the realtors introduce them to another couple or whatever. Well, there's some risks there, right? There could be, when you go to get your own financing, there could be a risk there. What about taxation? What if you do want to add your kid on, right? Sometimes they want to add a son or a daughter. What about that tax? So sometimes clients, we have to slow them down, and sometimes I'll say, okay, before I even pull a credit bureau, go talk to your accountant, go talk to your lawyer, go talk to whoever's doing your estate planning, and call me back. And I think, I don't know about you, but I know I get points for that because I've given them the right advice. I've stopped them before they've done the wrong thing. Do you guys find that now, as you do this longer, just giving the advice and redirecting is important?
I think we try and certainly do that, and I perceive that quite a number of our clients appreciate the fact that Peter and I also own real estate, so we can speak just beyond a technical perspective and not that Peter and I own gazillions of properties or anything of that nature, but we've dealt with a variety of those issues that they're going through, and we've as well, even though we may not have that gazillion properties, we can draw upon the experiences, as you can, of your other clients that have had the real estate investments, things that have gone right, things that haven't gone as right, if you will, those learning experiences. But overall, I think it's being able to work with them, trying to corral to a degree, but unquestionably, we've had clients that are, deal smitten or something to that effect, where they're bound and bent, they're going to make such and such an investment, have the blinders on, and sometimes we can advise, but we cannot control, of course.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is working with a team.
Mm-hmm.
We can't look at the advice strictly from an accounting perspective. I mean, we deal with a lawyer a fair bit. He always says, have you talked to us first? He uses we're the architect, he's the builder.
Good.
We put the plan together and he builds it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you really do have to work as a team.
Yeah. That's come up a few times on this show. And I think how many times have I told a client, just if you want, have your accountant call me, have your lawyer give me a quick phone call. We can probably deal with this in 2 seconds. Right. Whereas if I got to go through you all the time, it's going to be 15 emails and 3 weeks later, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's important, having your team established and that they know what they're doing, mm-hmm. right? That's really, really critical. So
I think also sort of helps in a smaller town like KW. As it's getting bigger, but still, you know most of the players in the town. You can call people up and have a conversation. And
yeah, it's very true. And that goes both ways. It's good and bad, too.
Yes, yes, it is.
I think I said this on a previous show. I'm originally a Toronto boy, so I've been here, 15, 20 years now. And you're sitting down with someone and you're like, oh, yeah, that James is a real jerk, right? And then the guy's like, oh, that's my brother. Oh, I'll get the bill. Sorry.
Yeah. I've had my wife come home. My wife's an accountant as well. And I was like, this is in my previous firm. Oh, we interviewed somebody today. And let me guess. And she's like, let me guess. She's got this, 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 and this. And I'm like, yeah, well, I got her resume today too.
Jeez.
Okay. All right. Yeah, small world.
Yeah.
And it's not just a KW thing either. I mean, because our clients are really across the country and the world, I mean, we tend to deal with a handful of law firms in Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, other cities as well. And that big world is becoming much smaller.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to digress a little bit, because that's what we do very much on this show. So, obviously both your wives and are in the same business, right? My wife used to be, so I used to be the bank. Yeah, that was fun getting across customs, right? What do you do? I'm a bank manager. What do you do? My wife would say I'm the teller, and then of course the giggles began, right? So, but how do you deal with like family life with having people in the same industry? Like, do you have like we can't talk about this for the next 3 hours at dinner? Like, how do you guys deal with that?
In my case, maybe a little easier in that Robin is in the marketing side of things, so she's not an accountant per se. I can't talk tax and whatnot with her. She's not interested, quite frankly. I mean, she's interested in the sense of how does this affect me and how does this affect the industry, but she certainly doesn't want to get into the details. Yeah. So I think that helps, just having more of I'll call it a natural dividing line. Mm-hmm. So yes, we do talk about accounting, tax matters at the house, a lesser degree with respect to what I'll call the clients of Peter and I, more in terms of the industry side, or alternatively our own real estate.
Yeah, I would say my wife's a CPA as well, so she's actually working with BDO now. So
is she?
I always joke that... She just started.
I always joke that we first met at KPMG in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
She was my boss then, and she's my boss now. Nothing has changed.
That's the correct answer.
Yes,
That's
it is. I think it helps because she understands what busy season means.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, good way to put it.
She understands what the job entails. If I was married to a teacher, it'd be very different. What do you mean you can't go away this weekend? Sorry, that just doesn't work at this time of year. Yeah. And if she were to complain, I'd be like, okay, are you going to help me do some of my work?
Yeah.
I think it's better.
Yeah, interesting. And I think everyone has a different spin on it, and so, like I said, my wife used to work at BMO at the same time I did, and she would come home and she would say, well, this happened, and of course I know the other managers, I'm biting my tongue, and we just have to have these, we're not talking about this, that's it, just an hour or two we're not talking, or we just don't talk about it at all. I know a realtor partner of mine who his wife is the admin person, and I asked him, I said, like, how do you deal with that? Like, what if she makes a mistake? And he goes, she makes a mistake, I don't, that's it, I don't say anything, she's my wife too, right? So it's interesting how different people deal with it. So okay, so tell me a little bit about what have you seen from CRA? So are there any changes that they've made that have had significant impact to self-employed, real estate investors, that sort of thing?
I would say, I'll let you talk about more of the pure tax technical, George. I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, you are seeing CRA being very, very aggressive with real estate investors.
Like from auditing them, or
yes,
like being strict on bookkeeping?
Audits. They now have a real estate-focused audit team.
Okay.
That started in Kitchener and is now enrolled across the country. So if you are a real estate investor, you will get scrutinized at some point. Just accept it, move on. It's part of the business. They're becoming a lot more aggressive with HST. It's a huge issue right now. Got to do it right. You can be aggressive, but you can't be stupid.
Got it. So, okay, so there's two parts there. So one is on the self-employed side. So when you're talking about HST, like just reporting the right amount or having it on time? Or
more of the HST rebates, filling out the right rebate form.
Oh, sorry. So that was still, got it. Okay.
Yeah. If you are going to do an HST rebate, be expected to get audited. I think our HST partner said it's virtually 100% that they will ask for something on it.
Yeah.
It's just big numbers.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to care about the $10 Metro Pass or that you put through, or the $2 million piece of property?
Yeah.
If you make a mistake on the $2 million piece of property, it costs you a lot more than on the $10 transit pass or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and I see a lot of tax returns, a lot, and of course when we do stuff at the bank, we go through everything, right? And we see a lot of weird things, and even now the bank has started to say, like, look, if you're, I tell my clients, the bank will mess with a lot of people, the government's not one of them, right? So you just got to make sure that your taxes are in line and they're done properly and you're not missing stuff. And because if you're audited, now all of a sudden the bank is at risk as well too, right? So
it is, but just because somebody's audited, that doesn't mean we should go into a full-blown panic. I mean, most of the audits are, quite honestly, very routine. They need to be managed properly. We probably, I don't know, Peter, go through 2 or 3 what I'd call bad audits a year, and not necessarily bad in the sense of the final result, bad in the sense of a painful process. But most of the audits are, relatively speaking, short, quick.
If you're detailed and you've got your bookkeeping done, and you should be able to get through an audit relatively easily. Sometimes we've seen, unfortunately, the quality of all the auditors is not the same. You're going to get some very, very good and knowledgeable auditors, and then you're going to get somebody who has no idea what the industry is about and is going to get confused. And unfortunately, those would probably be some of our challenges. And
managing that process, yes, yeah. or an appeal stage, and no question. But in terms of going back as well to the original question for these tax changes, as Peter had said, not just the changes really that came out in 2018, some in late 2017, but a few years back it even started to change. The ability for us to use some of the common planning with corporations, where we're passing dividends amongst corporations. Beforehand, we could do it virtually all the time when properly set up on a tax-free basis. Now there's still that ability, but in certain cases, and the biggest case where we frequently cannot use that strategy is where clients are investing in long-term hold real estate, which is going to put a damper on the structuring process for quite a number of people. Now, again, there's alternatives, absolutely, but we've had to change that structure. So many of your listeners, I'm sure, have seen and heard about this idea of a 3-tier structure that many people continue to advise. One of my meetings yesterday, again, actually maybe 2 of them now that I think about it, they were asking me what my recommendation was with respect to the 3-tier structure. And it's not that Peter and I don't recommend it, but probably before we would, I don't know, recommend it in 3/4 of the cases, for example. Whereas today, I don't know if we hit 5%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that has really changed how we're doing things. The rules restricting how and who we can pay and how much and what that process is has had a significant impact on the structures that we're recommending. The financing changes that have come through last year in particular have had a major impact in terms of how we're putting those structures together for quite a long time. And I mean, and really one of the reasons we started working together, Stephen, was you were able to get that corporate funding, and we were able to set up some wonderful structures. And it's not that it can't be done today, but the choices are certainly restricted.
You guys make changes to what you're willing to see, whether it's multiple tier corporations or single tier. I mean, we've talked about that many a times, and if you guys change the rules, we've got to change too.
Yeah.
If you can't get the financing, the tax really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're not buying the property.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's where, I mean, death taxes and bank policy changes are all inevitable, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean,
sure.
it is kind of keeping up and, figuring out what's best. And I think the bank, the bank sometimes looks and to see what the government's doing and saying, okay, we better simplify our process as well and say, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that anymore, right? Because I think it's, unfortunately, sometimes clients have to change. And how many times have I had clients I could do things for 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they come back and I'm like, sorry guys, I can't do it anymore. I got to find an alternative, right? So it definitely happens, that's for sure, a lot. But are you seeing, so I know you're saying that based on what you're seeing from your clients, maybe there's less of that multiple tier ownership. Are you just seeing more of the simple, husband and wife are the shareholder and we're not doing the multi-tier that much? Is that
different?
Yeah, so I would describe it as we've probably the last 20, 25 years been involved on average setting up 100, 200 corporations each year and say a couple of family trusts. Last year, and I expect for the next few years, I think we've been involved with 40, 50 family trusts or so, and not as many corporations because we're not setting up that parent corporation that we would frequently use. But we may set up beneficiary companies, for example. So there are instances where, as I understand it, the financial institution can be very happy if they see a family trust owning a corporation, but they don't seem as concerned with respect to whom those beneficiaries are, which almost always include corporations. So all of a sudden, while a little more expensive to set up and maintain, usually more than worth it, and we do that analysis with our clients, but then that's then keeping the financing side happy, the tax side happy, the legal side happy, and again, it's just working together to try and identify what that ideal structure is. But certainly, as a result of changes to the tax rules and financing rules, we've evolved. It's somewhat funny watching some other workshops and whatnot where they're still using some of these old techniques, but they don't work. But I appreciate too where clients or prospective clients can be frustrated because they'll hear from, whether it's from a mortgage broker, lawyer, accountant, whatever it happens to be, they're getting some conflicting advice, of course, and in some cases stale dated advice, or they're reading an art. They could be reading one of the articles Peter and I did, but if it was an article 2 years ago, it's no longer applicable today. So it's
got to update that blog.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
And again, that importance for that current information. But yes, we've had to evolve, and existing clients in many cases had to tweak the structures that we've used. But in some cases, we're also, I guess, having the luxury of saying, yeah, we need to make some changes, but it's not going to be the end of the world if we do that 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Yeah. Some are more important to do immediately based on the client situation. Others we have time for. There's not a need to panic in some cases.
Yeah, the other thing I will say to your listeners is, if you're going to use, whether it's an accountant, lawyer, mortgage advisor, if somebody's giving you cookie cutter advice, it's the same from every single person, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because we have to tailor the advice to your needs, not what makes it easier on me, what makes it better for you. And you're probably going to be the same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think maybe people who get into it to begin with can't sniff it out, but if you've been doing it a while, you start to talk to lawyers, accountants, mortgage people, whatever, you can kind of sniff out who kind of sounds like they know what they're talking about and who doesn't, and who is current. Like that's huge, understanding. And that's why I like dealing with both of you. I know you know where things are today because they're changing so fast, right? And having that, to your point, tailored, to what I actually need. Because it can be complicated. I mean, I'm sure you run into real estate investors who have residential real estate, commercial real estate, and they're self-employed, and one's a doctor, and one's you got the whole kit and caboodle of complexity, right? So it has to be very, very specific. And you said this, or team. Everybody has to know what the heck they're doing, right? Because if they don't, I listen, I've turned away a mortgage before. I've said this recently. I can do this. I can do the mortgage for you. I can punch it through. I said, but it's not the best thing for you. Do you really want to do it? I'll do it. But do you really think you should be doing this?
Yeah.
And they backed out. And I felt good about it. I know it's weird. I didn't close business, but I did what's right for that client. And I think, you both do the same thing where, maybe it'll cost you a little more, but we'll get it done right. Or maybe we can save you some money, but just do it right.
Or there are times when we'll sit down with, the plan is so important. Where do you want to be 10, 15? But people, when we're speaking to them, I can hear them. If I get the classic, I was thinking of buying a couple of properties, seeing how it goes, and then expand from there. It may not make sense to incorporate at that point in time. Because we've seen clients where they buy one or two and they say, I never want to buy another piece of real estate in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if they all of a sudden get the bug and they want to buy 50 more, maybe we should have incorporated the first two, but we'll deal with it. I'd rather deal with that at that point in time than give you the wrong advice up front.
Yeah. And then lose a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, or you hear clients, when we say we don't recommend the 3-tier structure, they're like, why not? All my friends have it.
Yeah, we're getting that a lot right now. and I guess the other thing that's really had an impact for our clients in the business that Peter and I are doing, and I expect yourself and other realtors, last summer, as I understand it, security rules changed. And so we had a lot of clients that would be investing in second mortgages or syndicated land development deals, et cetera. And so it was their way, I think, of getting into real estate without necessarily perhaps doing as much due diligence as they should have otherwise done in their investing activities. But when they then had this, in many cases, a dramatic cap on what they were allowed to place for investments with these different syndicated products, all of a sudden, wait a minute, now I've got this money, it has to go in traditional real estate. And so again, the structuring that Peter and I were, I think, finding ourselves, I don't know if I want to use the term evolve or devolve, but one of those two, for a number of years where, again, Peter and I were trying to get people to really look at these products, and not for us to say that they were good or bad per se, but where somebody is just, somebody has presented this to me, I just need to write a check and I'll wait for my check to come at some point in the future. If that was all the due diligence that was completed, I mean, we're going to score an F there.
Yeah.
And so I actually, as perhaps horrible as this sounds, in some ways I think it's been a blessing to have these restrictions, just because it's forcing people to do more due diligence. I don't know why, but somebody is not as likely, or my observations, to ignore a variety of that due diligence if it's a piece of property, where it's really easy to ignore that if it was a piece of paper.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me, so I work for RBC. We happen to support investment properties and holding corporations. Okay. So I get the question a ton, right? Sometimes they start with me because maybe I've given them the good advice. They're like, sure. Well, should I incorporate? And of course, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, right? Like, so give me real general, and I know that it's different for everybody, but when should someone start to ask that question? Do I need to set up a holding corporation?
I would say at the beginning.
Yeah, before they've bought the first property in an ideal world.
Tell me what your plan is. It's simple. It comes back to that. Mm-hmm. Like, if your plan is you're going to go out and buy a 10-plex, as your first, we're probably going to incorporate you.
Yeah.
Like, if you think I'm going to buy one condo in downtown Kitchener, probably not. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've got an existing business, and that's where the down payment's coming from, our advice will be 99.9% of the time that's going to be in a corporation. Yeah. Now, which one's going to be the question?
Yeah. And we're also, again, in common scenarios, looking for some history. Like, has this person or couple bought properties before? Or maybe they've never bought a property, but their parents had 20 properties and they grew up in that environment. Somebody that has a $30,000 a year job versus a $130,000 a year job, again, that structure could look different. Their capacity to buy can be different. But even that $30,000 a year job, if we then find out, oh, wait a minute, I also had an inheritance, or I just sold a business, or I did this, or I did that. One couple I was speaking with a week and a half ago, again, not overly wonderful salary levels, if you will, nothing bad, just not anything to write home about. But the big key was, oh, wait a minute, in the next quarter, I'll have sold my my portion of my business. I'll get $2.25 million for, and they had over $1 million of equity in their home. And by the way, I'm managing for my parents a couple $1 million. and so again, we need to dig into this.
Bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, here's one factor. I mean, probably didn't need to be much of an advisor to figure out as those bigger dollar numbers start to become available again, that advice from a structuring perspective, of course, changes. But there needs to be a little bit of digging, and why that's not just, well, that's what my buddy did or neighbor did or parents did or what I did last year. That doesn't cut it today.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of this, foreign money. We're seeing a lot of that. And how do you structure people bringing money to Canada to buy real estate?
Are you seeing that around the country too? Or are there? I mean, we obviously know about Vancouver.
Right? Toronto.
That's where you're seeing.
You're seeing a lot more of it now in Montreal.
Okay.
And even local.
Yeah. When they put the foreign buyer tax in Vancouver, money still came. It just went other places. That's all that
It's
did.
more of an inconvenience for some people.
Oh, if that's going to cost me X to do this, I'll just go over here.
I heard people were buying things right outside whatever the geographical area was.
Literally across the street.
Yeah, crazy.
Or it changes the nature of the investment or how it's structured again.
Yeah.
And we have to adapt to those rules. And yes, they make changes. We can debate forever and a day whether they were good or bad. But at the end of the day, Peter and I are being relied on for providing advice to what those people are looking for, and try to provide some alternative suggestions as appropriate. But again, another reason to ensure that you're not reading from the rule book 5 years ago. You're reading from today's rules.
Yeah, Peter and George's current blog. We had the same issue with Kitchener-Waterloo in London. Foreign buyer tax here.
That's right.
Not in London, right? And people are just moving down the 401. But anyway, there you have it. George Dube and Peter Cuttini, partners at BDO here in Kitchener. Thanks for listening. Make sure you visit us for episode 14, where we're going to talk more audit talk. Okay, so all sorts of stuff about audit. We're going to talk about their take on investing in U.S. real estate, and of course their top 5 list, which George keeps to just 5 items as opposed to many more that he said he could actually offer us. So make sure you follow me on both Facebook and Twitter. The handles are RBC Stephen Green, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.